I'm Brian, nice to meet you. Garrett, nice to meet you.
Hey, I think you should mention the sponsor.
Well, I will do this, but yeah. Tonight's event is sponsored by Nick.
Oh,
Nick is, yes,
yeah.
which, Nick does, static code analysis. So if you have an active project, what's that? Oh, and dependency, that's not part of static analysis? Sure, both splitting hairs stuff. It's there to make sure that the code you write is actually thoroughly vetted, secure, to make sure it actually holds up well under duress. And if you have a personal project, it's free.
Pretty cool.
I do not.
Are you? Oh, you do. Interesting.
Right. Wait, you work there now?
No, I work there. I thought you said, do I, like, you work there?
Yeah, no. So Randall, who does work there, couldn't make it tonight. And, volunteered to still sponsor the event. And that, come back another night for you, so thank you for the event.
Absolutely.
Hi there. Welcome. Earlier. We start doors at 6, and then we don't really start until 6:30. So we have time to there's pizza and salad, beer and soda, and social. Yeah, I'm Brian.
Ah, the good guy.
Yeah, that's not
So that's Irish, right?
all spellings of Brian.
I never thought about it that way. I think that's different.
You're not even Irish.
Nope.
Maybe I'm Irish. I don't know. I know enough, yeah.
Well, we expect to ramp up then time goes on, because the NJS meetup, which is way more, they're starting back up soon, and as they get started up, cross-pollinate then, I'll go over there and shout them out, so they are particularly important.
Henry Schein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, NJS. Now. That's how I hear it. My wife. Funny how that happens. People go around, go places. So,
Been aware of it.
there's a lot of people like that. Like, I actually really like it here.
Well, let me do it.
Mrs. Laurie?
I'm gonna go home. Yeah,
Okay, super.
yeah. I will see if I can get the paper recap.
You will.
I'm sure I can't, they're available. The other.
All right. Yeah. Joe, get out of here. I'm moaning at my laptop. Last month, but you're here now, so I can just ask for help. I want a cat. I hit the cat button. Nothing shows. Okay? Because it was on, we were like, every guy. There's no weather. So we're broadcasting TV. You want to do the other? I'm already casting. Now, Lord. Thank you. No, that's about what we have found out anyway. I'll show you one other. And that is kind of our, I put together a few, like, starter questions to get started. So, there. The other thing from the yeah. I might like take people off and say, you know, what do you think? I didn't think so. The one thing I might ask too is because we've got a like in different positions, take something small. It depends on what you ask and how yeah, we think like, hey, we'll be the first question. I'll give you we have a chatting smart. Alright, we're going to get back in about 5 minutes, so, you know, re-up your pizza here and enjoy your time for a moment, and then we'll, we end up tonight, and bring your questions, bring your aid, and get everybody to really help you find what you need here. And, sorry, we'll see you in 5. If anybody needs it, restroom is just past the door on the right, past the steps. And if you haven't gotten it already, there's beer and soda in the fridge, and pizza and salad. Please eat the salad, it doesn't hold well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
I'm gonna take a picture.
So you can do like a selfie or something?
Yeah, you gotta do that.
Wait. Do I get it? Oh, yeah.
I don't want to take your picture, but I think it's actually better for you.
Would you?
Yeah, so it's my ex-coworker that's the manager.
The unofficial sponsor.
Thank you.
You can check it out.
Look at that. That is Bend DevOps. Well done. Wow. Yeah, that does look good.
I just realized we were using it so hot because they had like that 6 months.
Sure, that's good.
Yeah, great. And it's like I get
I'm trying to convince people to come over to the side and
you want to be cool?
talk to people.
Press down.
You know, we can't all be as cool as Jason. So.
Right.
That's the I've been doing this long enough that like I could.
When I moved to Shanghai,
So this is actually your microphone.
Love it. I've used one of those for this type of thing before. It's actually a handy little thing. I didn't realize it was probably to like get one of these little boombox things.
I didn't know it was supposed to have a mic.
Yeah.
I had a GPO or something for my try there, but I didn't put, you probably have.
I think we all came up here to just show off. Make sure we're totally half checked out.
I figured I missed something, so I just.
Evercharge?
You actually next to you?
Joe.
I get to come see you.
Get that, come on. This is fancy stuff right here.
Oh, it's you and your
Get me in there.
There you go. Yeah.
I feel like, you know, can you change it to crackling fire?
What?
Crackling fire, you know?
I could.
Runway ML. You could, you know, put the logo over there.
Although if we see the mountains and trees switch to fire, that could be a little traumatizing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's awkward.
Go back to a couple years ago.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Because we're,
I was here breathing smoke.
oh yeah, it did kind of gnarly.
All right.
Seems great.
Cool. So when we get started, I'll ask you two to like introduce yourselves, you know, name, current position, current company, you know. We're not starting yet.
Briefing. Tune into the briefing.
Briefing. All of a sudden, everybody gets quiet. Yeah.
Hey, you're going.
Yeah, because I don't know. I'll let everybody else. This feels really weird right now.
Hanging on edge.
Talk amongst yourselves. All right. Or should we just get started?
I think we're ready.
I think I've already done it. Okay. Cool. Well, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another rousing edition of Bend DevOps. We are so glad you're here. All right. Cool. So to get started, first off, the space has been gloriously provided by Bend Tech. Bend Tech is that space in there as well as this space in here. We have desks for rental, we have chairs out here for rental, there's great Wi-Fi, there's adequate coffee, hotly debated adequate coffee, and you know, it's run by our good friend Jason here. Jason, you want to tell us about the Logging Path?
So we're a nonprofit that focuses on first building community and helping you if you're a remote worker and you want to kind of take the transition to being an independent contractor or self-employed person, or kind of start your own company, even more importantly. we help kind of guide you and give you the resources to go from being the remote to the independent IC to the main chair. We've had some pretty significant successes over the last several years with companies coming out of us that have raised like $10 million plus in venture capital, have had $10 million plus exits. So you can sit out here for $100 a month, which is kind of cool because we have access to just kind of conference rooms. You can use the call rooms. There's coffee, there's beer, there's relatively okay people. And then you can also go to like flex desks, which are 8 to 6, or dedicated desks where you have a badge to come in 24/7. We have a shower and a workout room and that kind of jazz as well. It's pretty rad. So I've been the president for about 5 years, in addition to running an organization, an engineering team within an organization based in San Diego. But if you have any questions about it, the first day is free. If you want to come cop a squad, kind of get a sense of what it is and just not work at home, come on by. I'm in the last office on the right in the other room. Just come in, knock, say, hi, I'm here, and then we'll get you set up.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Cool. So there's our first sponsor, and our next sponsor is Sneak. I hope I say that correctly. Sneak. As in the nights you say sneak. So I'm just pulling up the blurb here. Sneak finds and automatically fixes vulnerabilities in your code, open source dependencies, containers, and infrastructure as code, powered by Sneak's industry-leading security, intelligence, and decode AI. Ooh. And the best part, it's got a free forever plan for personal projects. So if you're working on your own thing, you're working on a new patch for Pulumi, or you're, screwing around with that, next JS web framework that's going to topple Vue, then you can use Sneak to scan your code for free, at least until you get big enough that you need their professional service, which until then, enjoy it for free. This is great. It means that everything you write can be inherently more secure. Cool. All right, so next up, let's see about some networking. So who here has a company that is currently hiring? Raise your hand. I will be very soon, but I can't raise my hand yet. Next out of you who raise your hand, who's hiring for junior positions? Cool, I see a few hands still. That's excellent. And now everyone else, who is looking for work? Cool, we got a lot of hands out there, so you all saw each other's hands, so you should go talk to each other afterwards, and when you talk to Jason, hassle him, always, because he likes it. But anyway, so today we're going to talk about how do you crack into that first job. We've got a lot of people in this town who have been going to school, self-teaching, doing hacker boot camps, and there's often a gap that we have to jump across between I have this skill set, I have this interest, I have this drive, I even have maybe an accomplished project or two, to now I'm getting a paycheck for doing the tech, for doing the work, for deving the ops, for opsing the day. I've heard it all. And that's what we're here to talk about. Cool. So to get us started, why don't we run some intros down? Let's start. You already had your moment, so we'll start far in. Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler Hardison. I am a senior DevOps, senior software engineer for Evercharge. We are a electric vehicle charging company, meaning we supply the equipment that does charging. And at the end of this month, we are getting ready to launch our first home charging unit. So if you have an EV and you want a charging unit that looks really hot and supports Bluetooth and some data collection that you can mine yourself, we've got your unit. I've been varying positions since the late 90s. So I've got quite a bit of experience dealing for jobs that don't exist anymore.
Very cool. All right, Matt?
Matt Small, work for ClearScale, an enterprise account executive. I'm a sales guy. I've been around the DevOps space and around AWS for 15 years. I have a weird infatuation with cloud plumbing. And prior to working on the professional services side, which is what ClearScale offers, coders for coding AWS, I was heavily in on the technology ISV side, the independent software vendors. So products like Sneak, and others that, software engineers, if you're trying to build technology products for other software engineers.
Thank you, Matt. Laurie?
I'm Laurie Fletcher. I work at PacificSource. It's a health insurance company. They're kind of northwest, Pacific Northwest, so we go across like Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana, and they're slowly expanding out from there. We have about 2,000 employees. There's maybe 200 or 300, or we have 346 ITIL licenses in service now, so that's how many people do some kind of IT work at PacificSource. I manage service now. But we have about 80 developers or so, and I am an application administrator, so I'm not a developer, but I work with the developers and I train the developers how to do low-code, no-code options, because maintaining code, little one-off is terrible. So if you can do something more maintainable, that is more readable by more people. That's kind of what I focus in on. And there's an open position that is effectively my direct coworker, which I posted on the job Discord for the Bend DevOps. And just kind of for this talk, I started working in IT about 2 years ago, and then my background was in emergency services. I just kind of went from not tech to jumped into tech, and I love what I do.
Thank you, Laurie. Jason?
And we're back to me. So I'm Jason Weiner. I am the VP of Product and Engineering at a company called Blueboard based in San Diego. We've been around for just under a decade. We do HR tech, so we focus on when you reach an anniversary or receive a spot reward or some sort of incentive-related reward, instead of getting the shitty kind of like Garmin or AirPod, we actually send you on an experience in the world. So we have a team of experience delivery people, which about 100 and 150 people, who hand curate experiences all over the world. And then we give you white glove concierge service from tip to tail. So when you show up, everything's paid for, including tip. And that ranges from $150, so mani-pedi, massages, yoga, all the way up to $25,000, where we pick you up in a black car, put you on a private plane, put you at a table with chips, and you're James Bond for the day. We do that for companies like Google and Amazon and GoPro. We have 650 logos. We send 5,000 people a month into the world. We've sent 250,000 people into the world, and we do about 40, 50 million a year. I run a team partially based out of Bend Tech, so I have a team of 3 here, as well as 2 contractors, and then I have another 12 across the United States. And yeah, we do, and that includes product and DevOps and engineering. So we're moving into a hybrid scenario where we're getting off the cloud and moving to bare metal. So we're actually one of those kind of different people, leading edge people, according to David Hannemeyer Hansen. And so there's a DC in here that used to be owned by Sony. So we have a rack of servers that we're provisioning to go into a cage down in Fremont in about 2 months' time, and that'll run all of our infrastructure going forward.
Thank you.
Cool. How do I get the James Bond package?
Find a really kick-ass employer that's not me.
Was everyone here gets it?
Right. All you got to do is sign up. Make sure your company signs up, and you'll definitely get it back.
Look under your chairs for the envelope.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we have a broad spectrum here of background, of history, of types of position. We've got some IC, some leadership, some sales, some recent career transition, even. So you're going to get a variety of different responses to different questions here. So, I'm going to prime us up and ask a few questions, but you'll have a chance to ask whatever you think you can. And so please get as much information out of these brilliant folks in front of you tonight, okay? So to get started, and I'm just going to kind of ask this generally. I'm not going to ask anyone in particular. So whoever wants to jump in and answer, go ahead and jump in and answer. So let's start with one issue that I see a lot is people ask me about how to get noticed. So I've got a resume, I've maybe got a degree, or maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just getting trained up and I have this cool project, but I'm not getting any calls back. I'm just submitting applications all day, but nobody's calling me back. How do I get noticed? How do I then actually get myself to where recruiters, hiring managers will actually start to call me back? What do I do?
So I'm just kind of curious. My application process was heavy, like, within the last 2 years. When was the last time you guys applied for a new position? That might kind of...
This year.
This year? Okay,
Yeah.
Very recent. Pretty recent.
I would say probably 2 years.
Couple years.
Yeah, this first shot I had.
So I'm just curious of, like, our general, like, recent kind of experiences. I would say, look at what's on your resume, revisit that, go back, get some specific feedback from just anyone who doesn't really know you very well. And you can work with a career coach if you are associated with any kind of school. They probably have someone who can help you with your resume. Use it. That's what I did when I was going to school at the time, and I didn't complete a degree, but the best thing I got out of OSU was they helped revise my resume for a career transition. And no one tells you what you have to put on your resume. You don't have to write what you did 95% of the time at a job. You can write the 95% of what's relevant of any particular job. And so let's just say you did one small project at work that was of your own suggestion, of your own creation. You say, I had this idea, I put it into place, and they use it now. Doesn't matter what it is. That's something you should put on your resume. It's a self-starter kind of thing. It shows that you can do process improvement. That's, the entire world of technology goes on continuous improvement, and so just kind of show that you can do that. Regardless of what job you've had, you've probably had ideas about how to make that better. And, if it relates to any kind of software, any kind of, technology, obviously you can talk about that. Be like, hey, I took this Excel spreadsheet and I automated some little thing and I just figured out how to do it. You can do that. What about that? That's something that I would want to ask someone about on an interview.
Yeah, I would say you're also up against AI. It's not like AI is evil, but it isn't. What it is a lot of these recruiting firms are using tools like AI to scan piles of resumes. So there's a whole cottage industry now around tailoring your resume for the job you want so that you can get past that gatekeeper, that electronic gatekeeper, and get at least into the hands of the recruiter, who then is going to scan for more of the individual skills they need for the position, and then give that to the hiring manager. Hiring manager now is like usually third or fourth down the line to receive your resume. So that's one way. The other way is get to know the hiring manager. So if you want to work for a specific company, figure out who that person is, figure out how to connect with them. Bend is really nice because we have a huge remote workforce here. Get to know people at the local brewery. Here at this meetup, there's Bend JS meetup. Just start talking to people and get to know your skills. The other thing is, you have an online resume, whether or not you know it, now's your chance to know. Social media is also an online resume. LinkedIn is a big one. Tailor your LinkedIn profile. That exists. There are tons of recruiters who just spend all day searching LinkedIn. And then if you're in software development like me or DevOps or something, put something out on GitHub and just start, putting yourself out there. No matter how bad you think your code looks, if you're going for a junior position, you're not really going to care. The fact you have something out there and it works, they're probably going to grab you over something.
Even if it doesn't work, because the recruiter probably doesn't speak code. They don't know if it works. They're going to be like, oh, tech.
You got a contribution every day.
Exactly. So social media is a huge part of your resume, not just a single sheet of paper.
Yeah, I think there's I'm going to throw a little wrench in that. So one of the things you need to think about when you're looking for a job is, what do you want to do? And where do you want to do it? So, like, there are companies out there that are values-driven. There are companies out there that have a mission associated. Like, there's hydrogen. There's green. Walworts with green tech. So decide where you want to go, and then one of the biggest trends that you see, even though it's not really AI, it's still using graph theory, is how do you influence the people that are going to make the decisions? Like, the hiring managers are neat, but really I don't use my people anymore. So when I recruit person to person. So I look for people that can potentially be accretive. And so I don't let them go through my HR process. And I vet them with my team, and then I vet them myself before I put them into the system. And then we go through a values system where you do values interviews with the founders. But decide where you want to go and what you want to be, and then make that happen through the introduction. So I've got an analogy, or just a quick kind of story, which will be kind of fun. Buddy of mine, I moved to San Francisco at the beginning of the Web 1.0 world, and he was a Ivy League graduate, smart kid, way smarter than me. Couldn't get a job to save his life, so he put a sandwich board on and went in front of Bank of America Plaza at the foot of Market Street and handed out resumes. And he handed out resumes to anybody would take it. He ultimately got a job for a short amount of time as an advisor at Sutro & Company, which was a financial company. But what parlayed that into was meeting a man named Mark Goldstein, who created a company called Link Exchange that sold to Microsoft. And Mark had an engagement with a small company called Netscape, and he was placed as a contractor in biz dev at Netscape right before they IPO'd. And then from there, he was working under a man named Mike Homer and a man named Omid Kordestani, who quit because there was this other cool company that just started and became one of the first 10 people there. And so by doing this interpersonal, like meet this person, go where you want to go, he became the 13th person at Google and stopped working for the rest of his life shortly thereafter. But you decide where you want to go. He decided he wanted a job. He wanted a job in finance, but then he decided he wanted a job in the tech business. And then there was no tech business. There were no recruiters at that point. Nobody knew what they were doing. So he found this man. He got introduced to him. This man put him into another thing. Those people put him into another thing. And now he's worth, 9, 10 figures. So decide where you want to go, and then visualize how you're going to make it happen. And it's the connections that you make that are going to get you there. So I guess hopefully it's a good story.
That's cool. Go ahead.
Clarifying question, do you have any advice on how to decide where you want to go?
What do you like doing?
So far back, but
Yeah.
it's so back, there's so much
Back
to
end
learn.
is that, and it's also pretty consistent.
Yeah.
But then I come here. Oh, yeah. And I go,
The beauty of what we do is we don't always have to choose.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can change our mind. I remember having this discussion with a coworker of mine ages ago who was an intern at the company formerly known as Twitter. And he was brought in to work in InfoSec, and he was telling me, oh, gee, maybe I want to go. People were telling me, oh, you're in InfoSec, you should stay in InfoSec. And he said, well, maybe I want to be a database engineer. I said, don't let anybody tell you what you want to do. You do what you want to do. Now, it turned out he ended up sticking around with me in InfoSec, and we had a ball together, but he got the opportunity to explore it through his internship. And as you go and you talk to, if you don't know where you want to end up, then your goal is to find out where you want to end up. Read some resumes, talk to some people, ask some questions, find out more information, and it'll help you settle. Like me, when I first got started, I learned that I was generically a very good diagnostician. And I say generically meaning like I learned how to, tweak on cars from my dad as a retired mechanic. And he was really good at being able to say, that sound is most likely one of those 5 things. Let's go through whatever the easiest one of those 5 things is. And I basically use that process when I'm troubleshooting production systems nowadays. I say, of this alert, it's most likely one of these 5 different things, and I'll walk through it. So I get to be a mechanic sitting in front of a desk all day. It's kind of cool.
So where's the stethoscope too?
We have another question in the back, and then.
I thought it was an earlier question. So I had a slight deviation during COVID and ended up mentoring undergraduate students at W2. And one of my favorite things to tell them was learn what you hate, learn what you love to hate. I remember my undergraduate, I worked with nurses, and they would come home and be like, this patient puked all over my shoes, right? And then, like, they would tell this story to me about, like, oh, we had to learn about this awful public health situation where logistics and computers and, and like, I was like, no, that's not cool. I would love to tackle those problems, right? And it really became, like, the nurses really loved to tell horror stories about patients that, like, puke on their shoes, like the worst day, right? Well, I love the worst day of the tech logistics person. And so that was something that I really passed on to students when they found, like, because we all love everything, right? But it's like, what do you love on the worst day to hate and get through?
All right. Cool.
I don't know how to phrase this in a question really, but,
Fire away.
it sounds like what you're saying is, like, you need to go deep on something. And the best way to do that is to go deep on something that you love, because that's what's going to hold your interest.
Not necessarily. Yeah, it could be, I mean, if you love being, like, wide and thin, that's fine too, because then you're polyglot. And then you can sell the front end, you can sell the back end, you can sell CI/CD. Like, it depends on what you have a skill for. So if you can context switch on the fly, and that's a massively valuable resource, because when you're talking about planning, if you can do UX, you can do IA, you can do database, schema development, that's massively valuable. And then if you're able to shift immediately and say, well, here's how I'm going to build the REST API off of that. Here's how I'm going to structure it well so that somebody can consume it and the documentation is clear. And at the same time, you're going to say on the front end, here's how it's going to be consumed and then presented and styled in a way that's scalable. So now I've just said that I've created a very long run that's very thin, but now you're massively valuable to an organization. So then you can say, I can speak the language to the potential person that's going to introduce me to the person that's going to make the decision, the ICP, the ideal customer profile.
What do you think is the best way to demonstrate that on at that resume stage, like you're saying?
Don't rely on your resume.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, your resume doesn't mean a damn thing. If the resume it's a checkbox.
It gets you the first call sometimes.
Yeah.
There's often like an HR screener who's going to look at it and just kind of, if you're not getting any calls back, hence the suggestion to kind of look at your resume and what's on it, kind of thing. Is there anything that would capture the interest of someone in HR that's like, okay, do they meet the basic qualifications? Can they basically do the job? But then that doesn't factor into whether or not you actually get hired. That's just do you get a call back? Or are you going to succeed through the interview process? Like, what can you talk about that, showcases what you're good at? Give an example, like I'm a person of chaos, right? So, and that's what I am chaos. I've been joked about in more than 2 organizations of someone came up with the term like Hurricane Fletcher as a reference. And it's true in my personal life as well, but that's just kind of who I am as a person. And, background of emergency services, I'm used to lights and sirens and triaging and crisis situations. And so take that and put it into tech, and I like working on 100 different things during the day, and so I think one reason why they hired me over several other people, even that had been internal applicants in the position or in the company, was because they saw that. And I brought my personality with me of, I'm all for the, okay, we got a problem, let's deal with it, let's keep going, and I bring that energy, and I would tell just various stories, just pick something from different jobs and kind of have like a story in mind that can morph to different questions that come up in a resume that showcase what you're good at. Like I'm all about the chaos, but if you're not into the chaos and that stresses you out, then tell sort of like how reliable and how like consistent you are with your troubleshooting, and pick a story that showcases what you're good at.
Agree with everything that was kind of shared here. I'll try to be a little additive. The resume, I agree. The resume doesn't get you a call. I frankly disagree with that first call thing. I really think the power of networking is that interpersonal relationship that people are talking about. That's not just the hiring manager, but who's around that person. Who do you know in your network? Who do you know in their network that is close to somewhere you want to be? So put together 50 companies, that you would really like. Put together a few different job roles that you might fit in. My other piece of advice there is consider customer-facing roles, because as we look at, that's the sales guy here in me, as we look at kind of what's happening next with, generative AI and looking at, all of these recommendations for, focus on the interpersonal, like the value of just, hey, I know how to do this in Ruby on Rails will go down as, hey, this is a real example, will go down.
Billions of dollars.
Hey, you brought up DHH. Come on, you're the one repatriating over here.
I just fired my entire Ruby team.
So if you do that, or your Ruby team could now code in Python by just saying, hey, GPT, convert this code to Python. So, what that's never really going to do, sorry, put in Django, right? What that's not going to do is really benefit like the people, right? Think back to Office Space. I'm the people person. Like that's actually what the next generation is really going to require. It's those interpersonal skills. And my advice of how do I get noticed? Like, yeah, go out to your network, come out to events like this, look out for other events like this, go meet people, and then, yeah, like go look at their LinkedIn. Go see, are they connected to anything? Is this on my list of what I'd like to do? Is this a role that I'd like to, find myself in? And then on the resume side, I really like the reverse resume. A lot of people put their professional experience up there first, but if you're trying to get your first job, if you're trying to transition to a new job, if you're trying to, go on a mission, per se, flip it around. Put your mission statement up front, put your objective up front. I want to get a job doing exactly this. Put the reason why, customize it every freaking time. This, by the way, is after you hopefully made some connection, like you're going to put a nice custom resume in their hand. Yes, that's still a process. And the other thing I really think is important is, like you were saying, those achievements, bring them all to the front. Don't bury them under your professional experience at the end of like, oh yeah, I got an award. Like, did you get it? You have to throw that up front, Put anything you can think of. This project, I contributed that. I got this PR accepted on this massive open source project. Like, whatever it is. I was a homeowners association, board member, personal one on my resume. But what is it that you can put there of your volunteerism, of your community involvement, of your interpersonal skills, to then support your mission to, get that role to do that job?
Yeah, there's a yes and there. So yes and, when you're pitching somebody for a first interview or first meeting, you want to think about what do they need. Like, so if you're not necessarily talking to the hiring manager, but you're trying to pitch somebody, to pitch to a person who's going to be able to give you a shot at a particular role, decide what they need, and then, like, to Matt's point about, like, putting your accomplishments, whether or not they're professional or they're personal, in there, think about what will resonate with the company that you're trying to go towards, and then always target it that way. And I have another story that's kind of interesting. In my first company I started 8 companies, and I raised venture for 2 of them. First was a web services agency in San Francisco during the Web 1 era. And so we were the agency of record for PowerBar and for Specialized Bikes, and we did a lot of stuff for Netscape. But we wanted to do the Olympics in 2002, and we knew nobody at Microsoft or MSNBC, and we wanted the deal because it was a big deal for us. And so we laid out this like big piece of like roll of fucking butcher paper on basically like a table like that. And every day we had 40 people. Every day we came in and we're like, we need to get to Peggy White. Peggy White was the senior vice president of deals of new business at MSNBC for Microsoft that ran MSNBC. Like, how do we get to Peggy? We don't know anybody. There was no LinkedIn at the time. So we're like, how do we get to Peggy? And so every day we would keep adding, we'd keep building a graph until we found out a way to get to Peggy. And we made a phone call. She took the call. I sent her basically a 6-inch by 6-inch custom mailer that said, here's what we're going to do for the Olympics in 2002. This was, in 2001, obviously, still. And she's like, okay, let's go. So that's the same in the resume process. We got the Olympics. We produced it. We had 1 million people a day come to the website. It was fucking awesome. So think about what you want to get. Think about who you need to influence to make the right decisions, to make the pitch on your behalf, because qualified references are far more important than anything. And so customize your pitch. Make sure that what you're doing resonates with the target. And then be better than average. Like, be awesome. Be yourselves, because you're going to have something to add value to that company. I think that's just the way to go, personally.
Yeah, I'll add one more piece to that. When you,
And then I'm
gotta say
gonna
yes,
break
guys.
you off so we can
I
jump
got
forward.
one more, just like how to get this started, right? You look through the LinkedIn profile, you found a couple things that you like have virtual coffee. If you can throw it out, hey, 15 minutes, and to Jason's point, know your customer, and, this is lessons in sales, really, but you're not there to say, hey, I need a job, what do you got? You're there to say, hey, it's been a while, catching up, what's life like for you? And then you're just looking for them to kind of tell you what their pain is, what they're working on, what are they excited about, what do they hate? Do they hate their company? Is that something you can help with? So what you're really doing is you're just trying to understand what's going on at that target company. And the other benefit of doing this is if you get them talking and you say, hey, you know what? I was just doing this kind of thing over here, or I used to be in emergency services, and I know how to jump in and take care of it. And, you're just kind of bridging that. That person that you're talking to probably gets a referral bonus.
Yep.
So, don't go in the front door. Don't think you're doing anybody any favors by putting your resume in the system and saying, oh, hey, person over there, I put my resume in the system. Can you go help me out? No, you just gave them, you just lost them the opportunity to make a couple $1,000 probably.
They might get a board reward.
They might get yeah, exactly. So there again, kind of think about what are the relationships that you're building? You're building a relationship with this person that you connected with, and now you're giving them the opportunity to make a couple grand on a referral bonus?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. I just real quick thought here. So think of any company you'd want to work for. 3, 2, 1. Name a company.
What's the list?
What's that?
Zoe.
It's
It's a veterinary company.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of it.
Okay.
Well, let's close the scope a little bit. Think of a tech company that you might want to work for. How about you, Garrett? Name one.
Which Garrett?
Seriously, anybody, drop a name.
Garrett Spector is amazing.
No, drop a name of a tech company, small, medium, large, right now. What's that? Sigma. All right, I promise you, someone in this room either knows somebody at Sigma or knows somebody who knows somebody at Sigma. Like right here. Yeah, exactly. So now, if you wanted to work at Sigma, you could go look at people on LinkedIn who work at Sigma, and then you can nudge Justin and say, hey, Justin, you know so-and-so over at Sigma?
Well, you can see who he knows, because
You can see who he knows through LinkedIn.
Through connection.
It's that easy.
Yeah.
And I promise you, Justin's a nice fella. He'll most likely say absolutely, unless you're a jerk to him, in which case he still might say absolutely.
Come with that value proposition, though. Don't come with just the handout to say, hey, can you get this introduction? Come with the, hey, can you get this introduction because here's what I think I can do. Give them a little taste.
But on top of that, it's also about, you're going to need to enfranchise the evangelist, that something's going to be accretive for them. So, they're going to look better for bringing a kick-ass candidate to Figma. So, their stature, is either on the line or will be augmented by the introduction. So, you have to sell yourself to him before he's going to sell you to somebody else. So you got to think about that. How can I make you look good in the introduction and reinforce your network? Because I won't burn contacts. I know somebody at Adobe, I'd be like, hell yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to burn that contact for somebody I meet from OSU. I might burn it for somebody who's going to help me get a job if I want a job later, or if I want a deal later in life. But it's you have to think about what are the opportunity costs of this person, and how are you going to add value to their life as well, for them doing you a favor, because it's also that at the end of the day.
I'm going to throw out there that all this networking stuff sounds really cool, but I've never done any of that. I just applied for jobs and interviewed and got a bunch of offers. So that's why my suggestions are not about networking, because I didn't do any of that. I just applied and got into the...
And again, this is also...
But that's also the type of work
yeah.
that I work at it's about 2,000 employees,
Right.
a small but growing, small enterprise level company. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want Microsoft. I wanted, smaller but growing, and that is pretty much their application process. I come from a background of largely working in government, and I'm accustomed to government applications, and so, not-for-profit, small enterprise level is a fairly similar kind of application process, and it's comfortable and familiar to me. I got a bunch of offers outside of that, but, I didn't know anybody in IT or tech or anything. I didn't know about, meetups or anything. I just applied, which is why my suggestions go towards my experience.
Yeah.
By all means, network, but if that's not you, it doesn't have to be you. I'm just throwing that out there for if that sounds intimidating, don't do it.
Valid one.
All right. Cool. We had, back there with Seth, right?
Yeah, I had, so kind of, I guess, going back to LinkedIn and networking, it's really more of a social media question. How important actually is social media? I liked your comments about using it as a resume. So if I'm not actively on the hunt and essentially you're fishing somebody to get a job, can I just set up like a really good looking profile and not be completely active?
Well, let's qualify.
So just to give you an idea, I get about 3 recruiter hits a week right now, and my profile is marked as not open.
But it's also based on level. So
Sure.
because at junior mids, you're not gonna get hunted by recruiters.
Right.
So you're gonna have to be more aggressive than a senior level person.
True. But also having that information on there, because they're keyword searching all day long.
Right.
And so just because your experience profile doesn't show, like mine, 20 some odd years because I'm old, doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get those hits too. Just make sure you have that skill set on your profile and ask buddies, especially folks who have got lots of followers and stuff, say, hey, can I get a recommendation from you for this? And then that helps boost your profile as well for those search.
You can tell if someone uses LinkedIn a lot. Like my LinkedIn account, the only thing I do on LinkedIn is hit accept from the emails that I get that someone sent me a connection, and I think I have 20 people on there maybe. I'm like, I don't understand the point of LinkedIn. I'm forgetting, I don't understand networking that wasn't in the world that I came from for for the industry. And so he's someone that you'd want to get in touch with on LinkedIn kind of thing. And you can probably tell by reading the profile. But I still get hit up by recruiters and stuff. I'm like, what are you doing?
It's because it's a huge tool for them too.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the only professional, although lately it seems like it's kind of a crap show, but it's the only professional social media out there, to speak of, unless you go to Substack or Medium. Those tend to be a little bit more broad and esoteric and harder to find people on. But LinkedIn is more, about connections. You just start connecting people. Hey, can I connect with you? Hey, I did this work for you. Can I get a recommendation on this work? Even if it's not something related to what you want to do, recommendations stack up. So it is important. I would say it's more important for jobs in the tech space than it is if you're trying to go, be an architect for building houses or something.
It depends.
But it does exist, so, yeah.
I'm a stickler for business aesthetics. That resume should look good. Don't have that one word on the next bullet point type of thing. Clean that crap up. Your LinkedIn profile, the same. Make it look good. You want to have a volunteerism and there's no, I just did this, by the way, and there's no, organization for it. Well, create a company page and, stick the logo and, now you've got something that you can kind of brand up, and it is personal branding.
Yeah.
And however you feel about it, that's kind of what social media has done to us. And, my bias is consistency across social media. And, I favor LinkedIn because I'm a professional and it's a sales tool as well. But to your point, recruiters spend all day on it. And so if you're tuning just for those hits, throw some keywords on there and then get that recommendation that talks close enough to what it is that you're trying to do, and that's just another tool in your tool belt.
Now I'm curious where I may have lost my tooling because I was getting 2 or 3 hits of recruiters a day or week, month, whatever, very frequently, up until basically the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And then it all just dried up.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to go do a little polish.
So to keep in mind what's happened since then too, we've had a little bit of inflation spike in there.
Yeah.
We had a lot of layoffs.
Recruiting
so a lot of those recruiting stuff those people who you may have talked to like a week ago are no longer in recruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they took a hit. So I'd say this year has been my slowest year from that constant stream, but it'll pick back up.
Yeah.
It always does.
Fun bit of information too, if you, you'll love this. If you look at companies that are hiring recruiters, they're getting ready to hire talented workers as well. Not that recruiters aren't talented, but the point that, you know, when a company is making a bunch of money and they know they've got some growth coming up and they know they're going to be expecting to have a surge in headcount, they're going to hire recruiters. Similarly too, if they're about to retract, if they're about to start, you know, if they're about to go to a hiring freeze, the first people they lay off are the recruiters. So if you keep an eye on recruiter positions on LinkedIn, that can be a little pre-indicator of what's to come with a given company. So,
Who here leans, if you're a DevOps person, are you leaning heavier towards the dev side of that equation? Just a quick show of you. So you've got development experience. Do you have a GitHub profile? Do you keep it up to date? I would say link it to your LinkedIn, keep it up to date, just think. If you really want a development job, you know, you really are serious about DevOps and development, that's a good way to do it, is keep your GitHub updated as well. Occasionally, I grab a project, fork it, and then do some work on it, and then submit pull requests back. Another way to get noticed as well. Unfortunately, I tend to pick dead projects because we happen to be using those dead projects, and we need to fix them.
all right. Brad, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Brad, I saw you had a question. I didn't ignore you. Didn't mean why you think I was ignoring you.
No, I get ignored all day.
He was.
Kind of go back to resume things, like we've hired maybe 20 people over the last 10 years. And every job posting we put out, like since day one, we specifically said, do not send a resume. No, they're kind of worthless to us. And instead just write, why you want a job, tell us about yourself, your skills, you know, your favorite thing in life. And what it does is like gives us an opportunity to, yes, technical skills are important, but like communication, like forcing somebody to write kind of open-ended freestyle, like most developers are terrible communicators. And so it does weed out a bunch. It also weeds out 50% of the people that don't read it and still send in the resume. And it's just instant trash, like just follow some basic directions as a starting point. But yeah, we've ended up with some fantastic people. Some of them are like off the grid. They don't even have social media profiles. One of them lives in a tiny village in a forest in France. And he's like this amazing unicorn, you know, no social media whatsoever. So I'm sure we're doing all sorts of things wrong hiring-wise, but it's worked out pretty good.
If your people are good, you're doing it right.
Yeah, wow.
And, you know, more and more what you're describing is just that interpersonal touch. You know, you're asking them to pitch themselves. You're asking them to, you know, tell a story. You're asking them to communicate. And, you know, when you get to that next step too, you're now you're in a code interview. Like, it's the same approach.
We all know where
Like, you're not there to get the right answer to the code question. You're there to say it depends, because that's the answer to every code question, right? And then explain that. And, you know, it's really the skill with which, you know, you're explaining it depends, which is likely, whether you got it right or wrong, that's that interpersonal skill that's going to be a lot more valuable as the architect, the software architect, than the person that can, you know, crank the code out.
The other thing that you can do simply is, depending on how comfortable you are, is if it's a domain that you want to kind of own and become an expert in, make it your own. And so kind of, you know, do a 3-minute piece on like, here's how I terraform something, here's how I build a pipeline, here's how I go through my release process, here's how I go do, like how I scaffold a particular project. Here's like, you can do that in minutes, and you just freeform, and like if you look at the guys and girls who do that well on YouTube, it's massively valuable, because then you have this like captive audience, you have the ability to show that you can communicate, you show some sort of proficiency. You might be an idiot about it, you might not be right, you're going to find that in the comments, and then the way you respond to the comments also shows an employer, like, here's how they handle themselves in confrontational situations, which all developers have. So, because product people are insane, and designers even more insane, and engineers are just, a little introverted.
Then you get the
So-
sales guy to GitHub.
Yeah, which has already sold what you're supposed to deploy like 3 days ago. So just think about like how you can, build empathy with the person that's gonna hire you or essentially consider you, and it doesn't take a lot of lift. I mean, it takes your phone on a stand or in your hand, 3 to 5 minutes, and then off you go.
Real quick, other side bit on that too, is if you're writing something, put it on Medium, because you could actually get paid for it. And if you're making a video, definitely put it on YouTube, because if you get enough followers and subscribers, you can get paid for that too.
Right.
All right, go on.
No, who's here afraid of interviews, freaks out, panics?
Oh, yeah, that was actually gonna be my next run of questions, was about interviews.
I'm pushing the horse.
I had like a whole list of questions, and we all smashed through that just in the discussion of the last half hour. So let's talk about interviews.
Yeah, so, are you also afraid of public speaking, just out of curiosity? Does it cross that? Okay. Have you ever heard of Toastmasters?
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
We have one of the most awkward things you could possibly do.
So we do have a local Toastmasters club here in Bend, and I'm actually personal friends with the club president, and they have a great group there. They're such a great group of guys.
If you want to get over that fear real quick, do that.
Yeah.
And they're fully supportive, there's no judgment, and they coach you, and they walk you through it. I did it, it's been, 10 years now since I've done it, but I used to be very afraid, still am a little bit, I still get a little bit of that sweating going on, but for the most part, that helped me out a lot, and ultimately that bled over into interviewing as well, because a lot of times you may end up in a panel interview, and it's just like you're public speaking, small audience, but still public speaking.
Yeah.
Go to meetups.
And go to meetups,
Go to
like
meetups,
you do right now.
Because it's the most awkward thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you literally, like, you don't know each other, and you're like, hey. So, like you have to, nobody knows, like, who you are, what your background is, like, that's your opportunity to sell.
Yep.
And, like, you get, it's an elevator pitch. The idea around, like, how do you render yourself down into 30 seconds to make somebody, like, even remotely interested in talking to you further? And if they don't, they walk away, you're like, well, there's a litmus test. Like, maybe I'm not engaging. Maybe I'm not selling myself well.
Right.
So, and then you refine it. You think about it, while you're crying over a beer later, and then just like you come back, you try it again. So, it's fun.
So, spot question real quick, and then, how many of you have never done a tech interview before? I see 2 hands. How many of you have never had a successful tech interview, meaning you've never landed a job? Okay.
Well, I don't know about that, not landing a job.
Cool. So, and then how many of you also, like, have just had a hard time interviewing in general? All right. So one thing that I've learned, and I'm sure the panel might have a comment on this one way or another, the best way to get good at interviewing is interviewing. When I got laid off from Facebook forever ago, seems like a lifetime ago. And when I started interviewing, I made a point to start with throwaway companies. Meaning, I'm going to, because I started lining up potential interviews, and the ones that I really wanted to, I tried to push them off as long as I could. And then get a practice round in with somebody that I wasn't so sure about. And because that warmed me up for the future. Now, fast forward, I've even done practice interviews, both sides, with friends, like just casual. A friend of mine was starting the search, and she called me up and said, hey, I think I could use some practice. What do you think? And so we sat down, we did mock interviews with each other one night. It was just, she came over, we had dinner, we did mock interviews. And it was cool. Yeah. And we each learned something from that.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that, just to cut you off.
Hey, that's my job. Yeah. I'm the moderator.
Is to, at the end of whenever you do interview, it's kind of like sports, in the sense that, like, what are the 3 things you did well, and what are the 3 things you sucked at? And so, like, you want to do an assessment as soon as you walk out of there, because it's going to be fresh in your mind, and say, well, shit, I just rocked that. God, I screwed those 3 things up. Well, it could be one thing. It could be you will know when you're in an interview and, like, you say something, and it's just like, think. So I have another story. I'm a storyteller tonight. So I interviewed for the second project manager position at Facebook. when they were still on university in 2005 maybe, and maybe 6, 2005.
Yeah,
Oh.
5.
Like, it was real early, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so this was, I would have been like employee like 40. So it was, I was running a company across the street, and then I decided to leave, and like the VC there was like, hey, why don't you go talk to them, because they need project people. I'm like, cool. And I sat there, and they're like, you're gonna be fucking bored here. And I was like, I said too much. I went just that too much. I could have shut up and not tried to impress them. But I was also like a, hubris CEO coming in. I was like, there's no place for you here. So like, think about the limit. You want to push the limit and impress, but you don't want to position yourself out of a position. So, yeah, so it's.
I love the practice interviews, like, worst case scenario, you did fantastic, and then you say no to the offer, right? Like, not a bad situation for you. You got practice, and you got, great feedback. And, so I think, like, that's another important thing. Like, you don't have to take the job, even if you do progress. So, you can go a little wider, get a little more practice in. I really like that approach of, don't burn your top companies first while you're still figuring out, what resonates, through that process.
So don't be afraid of contract tech work.
Yeah.
That's where I started. And so when I went from emergency services, just jumped into IT. Emergency services, I went through a bit of a downfall and learned what PTSD really means to live through, and I couldn't envision another day at my job. So I applied for a bunch of places, hence I didn't go through the networking process, because I was like, I need to not go back to this job ever again. This isn't good for me. So I just put a lot of effort into, having a good resume, and I had very realistic expectations of, it's like my resume on paper doesn't look like I have a lot of tech skills, but I really do, and I talked about those on there. And I applied kind of, I just scoured, like the main job sites, Indeed was probably where I hit the most applications. I think I applied for 20 jobs. I interviewed for, I think, 16 of those, and I got offered 14 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
at what level?
Anywhere from, I applied for like 3 help desk positions, and I didn't want to do help desk, and it was the highest that I went up to that it was largely tech support, but not help desk, like not calls, like Mount Bachelor, their IT support, they have servers there, like I turned down a position up there. I was like, that's, I ended up going for contracting jobs instead of that. But there was like building Facebook's new server farm out in Prineville. I got offered that job, and I turned that down. I wasn't interested. I went with a different, I ended up working at St. Charles for their like Intune overhaul, and I was like, oh, that interests me. I was like, I'm interested in working at a hospital, from my recent work was like kind of relevant, and I ended up like rewiring pretty much every desk in the ER and St. Charles and wiping, blood off the cable. I was like, this works for me. I'm okay with this, And yeah, that was tech systems, one of the contract IT. So don't be afraid of tech work. It's a good way to try things out, because you can work there for 2 months and quit, and nobody's going to question it. They're like, it was a contract job.
Yeah, that's a great
one.
And for what it's worth, the contract agency, the headhunters, they are networking on your behalf, and they get paid by the company that hires you, so it behooves them to hustle on your behalf. So if you're just getting started, it's actually a really good bit of advice. All right, go ahead, Dustin.
So with the folks here who have experience, there's somebody here who's done interviews. I've done more than 500 interviews myself. I can help with mock interviews and talk people through it. But one of the biggest things I learned when I interviewed it for Facebook in 2012, I bombed every stage of that interview process, and then I got off. It's never too late to turn around an interview. During tech screen, horrible question, but he asked me to reverse a linked list, and I freaked out because I couldn't figure out what he was trying to get me to do. Because it was too simple, and it was so simple, he just wanted to get through it to get to the next one. I took up the whole time, floundering. I get finished, and I'm like, do I actually know how to code? Have I?
I gotta go work in MySpace.
Yeah. And I immediately reached out to the recruiter and I said, I bombed that, and I don't think my performance in that interview reflects what I can do. And he got back to me, he was very nice, immediately. He said, oh, we'll wait for the feedback to come back, I'm sure it'll be fine. An hour later, he said, you bombed that. But me being proactive, and the guy said I communicated well and I was open, and I wasn't like angry about it. I was like, I didn't do well. So I got something where he connected me with somebody closer to what I would actually do. And we had a great conversation, and so I was able to move on to the next stage. When I came on site, I interviewed Dostop. He's somebody who I ended up working with on my team. And he asked me to do some loop code type thing, and I was floundering a bit. And about 3/4 of the way through the interview, he stopped me and said, wait, tell me what you're trying to do. And I explained it, and he said, that's not what the question is. That's like 90 degrees off of what the question is. Here's what I was asking. I looked at the board, said, well, none of this is going to work. Erased all of it, and started over. And I bombed it. I did not solve the problem. But I communicated well, and apparently the feedback was, I don't know what the signal is. He wandered around for 45 minutes, and then the last 5 minutes he was done. And the other interviews, I was able to turn it around and just relax and talk and work my way through it. So that story is just, you can always turn around an interview if you can relax and sit back and present yourself and tell your story and present your skills for the job.
Similar experience there where I was doing a remote interview overseas, and the interviewer went through the coding exercise, that was fine. He asked me a question about architecture, and I was like, well, let me describe this, and like, you know what? I'm not describing it, so I literally turned my alarm around, because I have a whiteboard on my wall. I go, I'm going to show you on the whiteboard. And he goes, oh, okay. And I started doing it, whiteboarding it out. And I said, okay, does that make sense to you? He says, yeah, that's great. So I turned my monitor back around and continued on. And at the end of the interview, I always ask, so what do you think? Or how did I do? And he goes, you're the first candidate that ever turned your camera onto a whiteboard. And I'm like, so that's what got me the job. He was just impressed that I was like, you know what? I'm not explaining this very well. Let me just change the medium here and do this differently. So, yeah, don't be afraid to step out a little bit, too, when you're doing these interviews.
All right, so it's almost 7:30, and this is usually when we try to wrap up by, so we can have a little bit of social hour afterwards. So before we wrap up, is there any just pressing questions that you want to ask our panel?
I have a question, actually, for everybody else that's not on the panel. Who is looking for, like, junior mids type positions, mids positions and up, like leadership type, management? So in the junior mid range, and this is also Seth, right? So I piloted the student consultancy thing with OSU Cascades, where we took on people from academia and put them into an internship, and normally it was a 6-month deal. We've also, some of the people I've hired here, we've also put on like 90-day type internships. One of the really great things you can do if you're not going to go to a tech systems, which I highly recommend going to a tech systems, because it's a great way to have somebody evangelize on your behalf and market you, which is all we've talked about in P2P type marketing and getting your LinkedIn kind of curated. But if you do an internship, it'll suck. You might make $20 to $40 an hour for 90 to 180 days, but you'll get an opportunity to prove yourself in a low impact, high learning value scenario. So two of my guys that sit at the pod out there, I brought in as 90-day contractors first to evaluate them. So if you have the opportunity, so the very first person I took from OSU, There's a girl named Chevelle who's awesome, and she was at the top of her class. And she came to me, and she worked for 6 months. She ended up going to work, got her clearance for Northrop Grumman, sent shit into space to kill people, and then went on, and she's now a principal I think she's a principal or a 2 at Slack, and she's done very well. And so but she went from like no prospects, or there were no job opportunities for her coming out of OSU, because it's hard to break through the noise when you're coming through and you're trying to break into a junior mid-level position, because you don't have a lot of experience. So if you can go in and say, well, fuck it, I'm going to go like learn, and I'm okay, I'm humble, I'm going to learn as much as I can, and I'm going to go kick ass, I'm going to work 12, 14 hours a day if I want to. If not, I'll do what I've asked, maybe a little bit more, and then get it and prove myself, and then I get a full-time position, and then I can parlay that up and up and up. And we did that with 3 people from OSU before the pandemic. We've done it with 2 since in the last year. I highly recommend doing paid internships, not unpaid internships.
Never do an unpaid internship.
Venture capitalists love unpaid internships, and they are the remora of the world. But if you can get a paid internship, somebody will pay you to teach you, and that's awesome. You're going to learn best practices from people like this. You're going to be able to do cool things, and you're gonna net out with the experience. Even if you don't continue with the company, you're going to be able to go on and do really cool things in the world. And it'll also reflect in your personal projects, because now you have this like momentum that you can build on for your career, and that's pretty rad. So,
all right, cool. So I was going to ask for parting thoughts. That sounds like yours.
That's mine.
Okay.
I won't talk to mine.
All right, Laurie, do you have a parting thought for us?
Kind of summary, what everyone else is saying, and kind of figure out not necessarily what you want. If you know what you want, cool, go for it. If you don't know what you want, pick a starting point. My starting point was, I don't want to work in help desk, I don't want to answer phones, but I was happy to do in-person, desktop support, basically. Like, yeah, sure, I can go into your computer, sure, I can do that. That was relaxing. That was easy for me. I was like, that was, it was a step down in pay, but it was into the world of tech and IT, and I learned I did not wish to remain with that employer, and then I worked at a different employer, and I did contract IT for maybe 5 months total, maybe only 4. Maybe it was only 4 months before I, got the offer of the job that I'm currently at, and I'm really happy with my current job. Just kind of figure out a starting point. It's like, if you don't know what you want, then just go do something. Don't be afraid of contract work. You will learn more in 1 month at a contract IT job than you will being at home not being at that contract IT job.
I'd say, I guess, to add to that, even if you know where you're going, be open to how you get there. Consider alternate paths. Consider just, hey, maybe I am getting that, help desk job because that's the one that's offered and it's close enough to this other thing that I'm looking for. So just, consider, and then, in that context, you are not the company. You will maintain an independent identity before, during, and after you work for that company. So everybody loves, especially tech companies, we're family here, there's no family. As long as you're working for somebody else, that's what you're doing. Your family's at home, that's right. So, just remember that, if you take a hit, you get laid off or something happens, that's not your identity. That's nothing personal. That's not, something that, you did. That's business, that happened around you. And, you can still take those transferable skills that you learned. You can figure out how to bolt on other transferable skills to that next thing. Again, just be open to, kind of how you get there.
As I say, you miss 100% of the swings you don't take. So, there's a strength in numbers here. So, put yourself out there, talk to people, do things online. Like I said, from a dev experience, put yourself out there on GitHub and, grab open source projects if you're really serious about it. Yes, take some time after work to do that, but certainly do it. Social media is important, for better or for worse. Stay off the big players like Facebook because they suck. But yeah.
Have one, because they will check.
Yeah. Like mine's just dead space with an AI picture on it.
So one thing about what Matt said about don't take it personal, people don't really realize that companies are organisms. They need to eat, they need to breathe, they need to grow. You're part of that process, but you're not mission critical to it. So if you don't work for that formula, you're not going to be part of the formula. So just realize that that's just the way it is. It has nothing to do with you. It just means that it needs something else. So just like there will be an organism that you are symbiotic with, which is great. You'll find it. My closing point that I wanted to come back to is one of the things that we did with Chevelle and Laurie and Nikita and a number of other interns that we took from OSU is we put them through this boot camp and we have it codified. So if you have an interest as a junior mid that you want to learn how to build a back end and deploy it to AWS and build a React Native front end for it in a short amount of time that you self-teach, you can come do it here, post up, we'll set you up for a nonprofit so you can come in and if you're going to do it as an internship, we'll just become squat. We'll give you I'll give you the material and like basically you beat your head against the wall for an hour and then you come talk to me and then I'll help you solve it, but I'm not going to solve it for you, but I'll teach you how to build a back end, teach you how to build a front end, and I'll talk to it. You'll have to learn how to deploy it to AWS on your own. And by the time you're done, you're going to be able to walk in and be, well, this is what I've done. If you don't have anything on GitHub, to Tyler's point, you will by the end of that. You'll have the proficiencies and you'll have the kind of the stature to walk in and say, hey, I can do at least this, but this shows that I'm gritty enough to get shit done on my own, and then I can do this for you. And that's what's going to resonate with employers. That's what got Chevelle her job. That's what got Laurie her job. That's what got Nikita her job. So think about that if you want it. It's an open invitation. It's free. Happy to help.
How do you do that if you're working full time?
You come do it on your own pace. I mean, like, your work only lasts for 8 or 10 hours a day. So like it's literally a PDF and I'm like, here's for the endpoints, here's the schema. It's very simple, it's not very complicated. You stand it up on your own. Half the challenge is getting the friggin' dependencies installed on your laptop. And then, once you have that, then you just build this up. It might take you a day, it might take you a week. We give it to some people get it done in 4 hours. But that'll give you the ability to say, well, I have a REST API that I built in Python. I'm a pundit for Python. So, like, you have that, and then, provision something in React Native real quick, and off you go. So you can literally do it. If you can't dedicate full time to it, you can probably do it in a week or two, easily.
And I just want to say, not getting the dependencies working on my laptop was the reason I dropped out of the computer science major and, went into the sales side of it, So if you can't get the dependencies working, but you like to talk about it,
A fine way of saying there's room for all kinds.
Go ahead and wave your hands around, that's right.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's give our panel, we'll talk to us afterwards. Let's give our panel a huge thank you. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming and talking with us. All right, cool. So we officially go till 8. I'll start kicking you out around 8:30. Please, there's way too much pizza. There's probably still plenty of beer in the fridge. Have something, eat something, and talk around with each other. Crack open some of that networking skills that we're working on.
Love it.
Thanks again for coming out tonight. All right. Good stuff. Thank you. So, stay in the opera chain. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. Sure. Awesome.